12 games completed to start the year for Duke basketball. A lot of people curious how the freshmen would fare for the Blue Devils this season. Let's give you a review on the Duke basketball freshmen.
You are Locked On Blue Devils, your daily podcast on the Duke Blue Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome on into another episode of the Locked On Blue Devils podcast. My name is JJ Jackson. It's so great to have you here with us on Thursday, December 26th, 2024. Locked On Blue Devils is your one-stop shop where we discuss everything going on in the life of Duke athletics. We hope that everyone had a very Merry Christmas yesterday. Happy Hanukkah today as well. Happy holiday season as the new year is right around the corner and we'll be diving into 2025. If you haven't done so already, please be sure to follow and subscribe to Locked On Blue Devils for free wherever it is that you get your podcast. I ask that you leave a 5-star rating and written review, particularly on the Apple Podcast platform. The algorithms love those written reviews, and it means a lot when you take the time to say kind words about this program that we bring you each and every day. You can watch the show on YouTube as well. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, like this video, share it with your friends, comment questions that you have for us for future Mailbag Monday episodes. We really appreciate all the great support that we've got here in the world of Duke basketball and in the world of Locked On Blue Devils. On today's show, Kevin Connelly is here with me today from Ball Durham. I want to talk about the Duke basketball freshmen, the three guys that have played the most thus far for Duke, and Flagg, Knueppel, and Maluach. What's gone well? What can they still work on? What does it mean for Duke basketball moving forward? So I think it's going to be a really exciting conversation throughout the course of today's show. So we're excited to bring him on into the program. It's Kevin Connelly here with us now. And Kevin, happy holidays to you, man. Excited to talk a little Duke basketball like always with you.
Thanks for having me, JJ. Happy holidays and Merry Christmas to you and all the listeners out there.
All right, so I definitely want to talk about the freshmen. This is a Duke team that had a lot of roster turnover, just two players back from last year's squad, and Caleb Foster and Tyrese Proctor. And that means you're going to have more people in new positions, meaning the transfer portal and freshmen coming on campus, taking on these big roles. And so throughout the course of today's show, I want to dive into Cooper Flagg, Kon Knueppel, and Khaman Maluach. What's worked well for them? What can they still improve on? All those various things. But as a whole, when you look at what Duke has asked of these freshmen so far this season, what are those first thoughts that you have, man?
Well, at first, I would answer your question and say a lot. I feel like they've really asked a lot of this freshman class. And I mean, let's be honest, a lot was expected of this freshman class, specifically at the top. And kind of when you go back to, I don't know, let's say 10 months ago, 9 months ago, when kind of the high school basketball season was ending and kind of you had that all-star circuit. And then obviously the NCAA tournament was winding down. I mean, the people that thought the expectation was the two biggest impact freshmen for Duke were going to be Cooper Flagg and Isaiah Evans, because they were their only two McDonald's All-American. If you remember, Patton Ngaba was hurt for most of his senior year in high school. Khaman Maluach had not committed yet. If you remember, he was still a member of the 2025 class, and I don't think he committed to Duke until maybe early April. Might have even been early May. I can't remember off the top of my head. But yeah, it was Cooper Flagg and Isaiah Evans. And they were expected to be the two real guys who carry the scoring load for this team. And kind of how this season has evolved, it's been Cooper Flagg at the front when you look at this freshman class. And then Kon Knueppel probably right there behind Cooper Flagg is maybe the second most impactful freshman.
So a lot's asked of these guys to step up and take on the scoring load, the defensive load, the ball distribution and whatnot, in addition to the two returners in Caleb Foster and Tyrese Proctor. And then you feature a transfer class that's made a major impact for the Blue Devils so far this season. But to headline all of it, there definitely was recognition and hype for Cooper Flagg and what he was expected to be for the Duke basketball team. You look at what he did as a high school basketball player, winning national championships on the AAU circuit. He's doing everything. Everybody wants to stop what they're doing to watch Cooper Flagg play. And then over the summer, we got a chance to see him play with the Team USA select team prior to USA going to the Olympics there in Paris. And that only generated more and more hype for Cooper Flagg before he even plays a game for Duke.
Yeah, it felt like all that hype grew kind of as you said with every stop he made. I mean, obviously you had your hype of him in high school and showing out at Montverde. Even when you go back to his freshman year, when he played high school basketball in Maine, buzz was starting to grow about Cooper Flagg, and then it only grew once he got to Montverde and started winning all these games and playing in these high-profile events, and eventually culminating his high school career with a national championship. And then on the AAU circuit, when he played on a Maine United team that really didn't have that many stars outside of him, he was just playing with his buddies from back home, and they just kept winning games mainly because he was on the roster. And then you fast forward back to his senior year and the McDonald's All-American game, the Nike Hoop Summit, the Jordan Brand Classic, and then kind of, as you mentioned as well, with the USA basketball select team practicing against the men's Olympic squad and really showing out and getting all this high praise from these proven NBA players, all-stars, all NBA guys, some of the best players that we've ever seen play basketball. In my opinion, it almost felt like expectation was put on him that he really even couldn't live up to. Like, people were saying this kid could be the greatest prospect they've ever seen. So that was a lot to put on his shoulders. And I think for the most part, he's kind of lived up to it. A couple of blips on the radar when you look at the turnovers late in games against Kentucky and Kansas. And then obviously, I think even still to this day, the 3-point shooting has to improve for him. And it probably will get better. But really impressive to see how he's lived up to these massive expectations that were put on his shoulders.
We've got his stats on the screen for those watching on YouTube, but he's played every game so far this season. Cooper Flagg has been durable and asked to do a whole lot at nearly 31 minutes per game. Beyond the start of his college career, when he did experience some cramping issues, Duke has figured that out, and he has been a big-time workhorse for this basketball team. A lot of responsibilities on his plate, and you just look down the stat sheet. My goodness, he does everything. It's 16 points, 8 rebounds, 4 assists, 1 block, 2 steals. Efficiency is probably the one thing, if any, that you're going to look at and say, yeah, that could be better when you see a 39% shooter from the floor and 25% from three-point range. But beyond that, it's really difficult to be more critical of what Cooper Flagg has done so far for Duke.
No, and again, like as I mentioned, and you just hit on it there, I think the shooting numbers will improve, especially from the outside. But when you look at kind of the ease in which he does everything else, and I mean, let's be honest, I think a lot of people, when they would watch Cooper Flagg play in high school, everyone was fixated on his scoring. And scoring the basketball, although he is leading Duke in scoring with 16 points per game, I mean, that's not what he does the best on the floor. I mean, he's the best kind of as the facilitator. He has such great vision. His passing skills are phenomenal. He's a really good rebounder. And the scoring almost comes secondary to him. So the fact that he is leading this team in scoring, I think, is really impressive, and I think bodes really well for his future outside of Duke when he's the top overall pick in this upcoming NBA draft. So very impressed so far. And I think probably, and I keep adding things that, this might be more impressive, this might be more impressive, but
it just speaks to how good he is.
Exactly. And it's the lack of experience he had at the collegiate level and how good he was in Duke's early season games. Because as we talked about going back to the summer and here throughout the fall and winter, is Duke loaded their non-conference schedule. I mean, in the first month of the season, they played games against Kentucky, Kansas, Arizona, Auburn, and a conference game at Louisville. And none of those games on the schedule are easy. And he showed up every single game and really helped carry Duke almost to a victory or to a victory. And I think that's really impressive. And now as we get into ACC play, and as we've discussed at nauseum almost how bad the conference is this year, he's only going to get better and get more comfortable playing college basketball, which I think serves Duke a great amount of success once March rolls around in the ACC tournament and the NCAA tournament.
For those curious, Cooper Flagg does still lead Duke in 4 of the 5 major counting statistics in basketball: your points, rebounds, assists, blocks, and steals. The only one he's not the leader in is steals. Malik Brown has 21 on the season. Cooper Flagg has 18, so just 3 behind there. But I mean, my word, he literally does everything when we look at these stats. And in so many of these categories, Kevin, he's created a good bit of separation from the rest of his teammates. And again, this is a Duke team that's 10-2 to start the season, one of the most efficient teams in all the metrics out there, but it just goes to show the type of season Flagg's had so far that he's got such a comfortable lead in so many of these categories over his teammates.
And it's kind of funny because, right, when you watch this team, you would probably say they're not one of the more efficient teams offensively, but somehow the stats say otherwise. So, and as we've seen with John Shire teams, they only get better the later the season goes.
All right, so Cooper Flagg, impressive start to the year. No denying that with what he's done as a college basketball player. What other freshmen have made an impact for Duke so far this season? How about the big fella, Khaman Maluach? We'll break down his numbers and more after we take our first time out here on today's show. Locked On Blue Devils here today is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. FanDuel has so many ways for you to pick up a W. I love betting on which players will score a touchdown and how many points each team will score. It's such a thrilling ride to watch. We had great games yesterday on Christmas. The first one between the Chiefs and the Steelers. And then how about a 31-2 blowout? The Baltimore Ravens over the Houston Texans. We've got Thursday night football tonight between the Bears and the Seahawks over at FanDuel right now. They've got Seattle favored by 5. Get in on the action. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL and a proud sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils. Okay, we go forward here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils. I'm JJ Jackson, joined today by my pal Kevin Connelly from Ball Durham, talking about the big fella now, Khaman Maluach. He comes over from South Sudan. He's a part of the NBA Global Academy. You mentioned kind of reclassifying early, Kevin, and then also the fact that he's not playing at a traditional stateside high school. That makes it difficult to be a McDonald's All-American within the United States. And so for him, in some ways, kind of flew under the radar. And then once people saw him and his stature and his frame, we started hearing all the NBA draft buzz immediately. He gets to compete in the Olympics. And just speak to maybe the hype that was around this player before he even starts playing for Duke.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest draw was that size and wingspan, standing at 7'2" as a freshman. And you saw a glimpse of him playing in the NBA Africa Academy in those games. And he would kind of be a force down low, but I still think there's a difference between playing in that league and coming over and even playing like high school basketball, college basketball, and then obviously up to the NBA. So I still think there was a lot of questions when he came over, and I still think there are, because I mean, let's be honest, this is a player who started basketball at a very old age compared to the other players that are on Duke's roster. And you see the potential and you see everything he can be down low, but he's still learning the game. And we've seen that throughout games this season where, like at Louisville, he only plays 11 minutes and Malik Brown is playing really well. And then a game at Georgia Tech where they're not as strong inside and Duke has a big lead, they can feature him more inside. And in 20 minutes, he puts up 15 and 8. So I think there was a lot of hype. There were a lot of big-time schools after him, too. Let's be honest. It wasn't just Duke who was after him. He was a 5-star in the class of 2025, and he remained a 5-star when he reclassified into the class of 2024. So big-time prospect, really good future. I think you can almost see like a Derek Lively comparison where he's still very raw at the college level, but his game could be tailor-made for the NBA, especially we have seen glimpses of him being able to shoot from the outside. So I think the future is very bright for Khaman Maluach. You're hoping you can put more things together during his time at Duke, which is likely also only going to be a year.
Yeah, he lays such a strong blueprint defensively, averaging nearly 1 block per game. He denies so many opportunities for people in opposing teams to score on the inside. That's why Duke's defense has been so good and so effective to open up the season thus far, playing just 18.6 minutes per game. Although as of late, you mentioned it's kind of been an uptick in the opportunities that he's got out there on the floor. 8.4 points per game, 5 rebounds. And how about efficiency here? 79% shooting from the floor, 33% from three-point range. We'll dumb it down for people. That's just 1 of 3 so far on the season. So he has not attempted very many three-pointers from the outside. but an 80% free throw shooter for Khaman Maluach.
Yeah, and I think that's probably the most impressive part when you look at it, because it's not that small of a sample size either from the free throw line. He's had 30 attempts and he's made 24. And I think that's such a critical piece of when we've talked about how this is a team that struggles from the free throw line. If you can have him on the floor late in games because of how good he is defensively, and really for Duke, they have two outstanding defensive centers in Khaman and Malik Brown. But seems like Khaman much more of an accomplished free throw shooter than Malik. So if you could have Khaman to be that rim protector late in the game, and then also have Malik out there to kind of be that hounding defensive presence even on the outside, I think that would be big time for Duke late in the season with Maluach's ability to hit free throws.
Okay, you mentioned that game against Louisville where he only plays 11 minutes. After that game, the three games that have followed, 22 minutes, 24 minutes, 21 minutes. It is fair to point out that Duke was without Malik Brown for one of those games, and he's coming back from injury. So that has definitely allowed an opportunity for Maluach to be featured a little bit more. But I almost feel like, no, this is a trend that's going to carry on. We're seeing him get more accustomed to the game, feeling more comfortable. He's being more efficient out there on the floor. Are you in that same boat? Do you think just these minutes are only going to increase for Maluach as we keep moving?
I would say that I can see him living around the 18, 19 to 24, 25 minutes per game in conference play. I do think Duke is going to be involved in a lot of blowouts during conference play, so that'll allow him to be on the floor 4 more minutes.
I like the way you think. I like the way you think, Kevin.
Yeah. But yeah, I think these last 3 games, specifically Incarnate Word, when Malik Brown didn't play and he put up 17 and 7, and then against George Mason, who's a really solid defensive team, he only has 6 and 8, but the way he's going to impact things throughout the rest of the season, and when Duke has some stiff competition, I think is going to be big, because he's just going to continue to develop. And we've heard people say how much of a sponge he is in learning the game. And he has a lot of quality people around him teaching him the game. And even look back to the first time we really got to see him on the court against Kentucky. If he doesn't leave that game with cramping, you have to imagine Duke probably comes away with a victory. So I think he's only going to get better as this season moves on.
What have you thought of his personality as Duke fans have gotten to know him a little bit more, Kevin?
I feel like everybody loves him. Nobody has a bad thing to say about him. You see him on some of the videos, and I think he's still learning the American culture and the American language, but it just seems like he's embracing it all, and that's what you really want to see. I mean, his teammates love him, his coaches love him, the fans love him. So yeah, I think you can almost say he's become like the fan favorite on this team.
Without a doubt. Yeah, you could tell he's a big soccer fan. He loves sort of the cheering and the chants that are made throughout the game. And so Duke's had some birthday video clips of teammates, and he's leading the charge, and he's created all these songs for his teammates and whatnot. And that's just been really fun to see, right? For someone that large of a figure, and then coming over from South Sudan, getting used to the United States and American culture, to be so loved by his teammates, to have the opportunity over the summer for Derek Lively to be back in town and kind of put some work in with him there. Mark Williams stopped by when the Hornets had their training camp there on Duke's campus, getting to be around so many basketball players within the Duke family and then beyond. I mean, it's just been amazing to see his personality continue to shine a bit more.
No, it has. And I think going back to his play on the court, now I think there are going to be certain games for Duke where maybe he doesn't fit into the game plan in terms of if a team is undersized, and Malik Brown might be a better fit defensively or matchup wise. So I think that brings versatility for Jon Scheyer. You can go with the big 7'2" guy who has shot blocking abilities, or you can go with the undersized center in Malik Brown, who's an outstanding defender in his own right. So I think the presence of Maluach just brings so much more versatility to Jon Scheyer.
All right, so let's keep this going. We've got 2 guys down, 1 more to go. Kon Knueppel has been a rock star in so many ways for Duke. He has had a lot of hype around his name from preseason and into the start of these first 12 games. Let's kind of break down what it's meant for the Blue Devils after we take our final timeout here on today's episode. Locked On Blue Devils here today is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Game Time is focused on togetherness this holiday season. That means when you bring people together at live events, the experience is that much better, and it's also the perfect gift. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of different tickets. Curation makes it easier to save more on concert, comedy, theater events, sporting events, and so much more with Game Time Picks. All in pricing where it's going to show the total upfront with no surprise fees at checkout, and it's the lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Once again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's Game Time, a proud sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils. Okay, we move forward here on today's episode of the program. Once again, Kevin Connelly from Ball Durham is here with us. We're talking about the freshmen for the Duke basketball team thus far, and we're going to talk about Kon Knueppel now, a player in which the hype throughout the course of the offseason, really once the players started to arrive on campus, grew and grew and grew. Kevin, if you want to talk to that again, because it was Isaiah Evans in so many ways that was the higher rated recruit for the Duke basketball team. Knueppel down a little bit, and then all of a sudden we get ready for the season, and everybody within the Duke world is like, make sure you're talking about Kon Knueppel, and then the rest of college basketball followed suit as well.
Well, yeah, I mean, Kon Knueppel, he got the second most praise throughout the offseason, only behind Cooper Flagg, and that's just not of the freshmen. That's of anybody on the roster. I mean, everybody spoke so highly of him, and the way he started the season, you were like, all right, Duke has a legitimate lethal shooter, maybe one of the best they've seen since J.J. Redick, and then struggled against Kentucky, but then kind of picked things right back up against Wofford and Arizona, and then you get to the Kansas game, and he really struggles. 0 of 8, that's after being 1 of 8 against Kentucky, and you're like, all right, just a little bit of a shooting slump, and I think people were concerned about the struggles against good teams, like didn't play that well against Kentucky, did not play well against Kansas, didn't really look for his shot that much against Auburn. But I think we've seen, at least recently, the confidence start to come back, and he's a 50% three-point shooter just about over the last 3 games. So really can't beat that, and I think Duke is definitely going to need him and his shooting ability to space the floor going forward.
On the season, 30 minutes a game, 12 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists, 43% shooting from the floor, 34% from three-point range, and a 95% free throw shooter. He trails Cooper Flagg by just 5 assists for the most on the Duke basketball team. Statistically, what jumps out to you about him?
Well, I think everyone's going to say first the three-point shooting. I would kind of say the playmaking. I did not expect him to be averaging 3.1 assists per game. I did not expect Kon to be as good in the high-low and the two-man game as he is. You look at that game against Kansas when his shot wasn't falling. He's able to rack up 8 assists. Same thing really against Louisville. Shot's not there, although he hits a couple of late threes late. He has 5 assists in that game. Kind of did a little bit of everything against Georgia Tech. I think he finished with 18 points. He had 5 assists in that game as well, and I think he was close to 5 rebounds. So I think the most surprising thing, because as being honest, I think we all expected him to be a really good shooter.
Yeah.
I think just his playmaking ability has really stood out to me, and something I didn't really expect. And throughout this season, dating back to the preseason, I mean, his name just started to rise up these draft boards, and some people think not only can he be a first-round pick this year, but he could even be selected in the lottery.
I've been impressed by how durable he's been so far to open up the season. In so many games, you look at the box score, he's played the most minutes out of any of his teammates thus far, and just kind of always feels like he's under control. And when the shooting slump wasn't going the way he wanted it to be, he continued to put the work in from what we're told day in and day out, and knew that eventually these shots are going to start to fall and that sort of thing. But yeah, he's had a heavy workload though, Kevin, and people as of late are looking at how productive Isaiah Evans has been against Georgia Tech. It was awesome to see both Knueppel and Evans on the floor at the same time together. Hopefully we get more of those opportunities, but man, it's been fun to see that guy.
No, it really has, and kind of you're starting to see where the freshmen are taking over this roster, and it's not slowly anymore. We hit on Flag. We obviously talked about Maluach, and now with Knueppel and even a dash of Evans sprinkled in there. You could say them with Tyrese Proctor might be the five best players Duke has right now. Obviously, the transfers and Sion James is going to command minutes. But yeah, I think John Shire certainly has maybe a little bit longer of a bench than he did if we were talking a month ago.
Give me more than a splash on Isaiah Evans to end the show here. What have you thought of his play, and what can he do moving forward?
Well, I think the biggest thing, and everyone kind of hinted at this, was he needed to improve his body. I mean, he's very slender. They call him slim for a reason.
Yeah.
And that in turn makes your defense kind of lacking because you don't have that strength and that size. But when he finally got on the floor against Auburn in meaningful situations, I mean, when you hit 6 3-pointers and a half, you have to play. and kind of now in this rise, I mean, he's only played 9 games for Duke, and he's the team's 4th leading scorer. Had another great game against Georgia Tech, shooting the basketball. So I think for him, just continue to stay in the weight room, continue to work on that shot. And the biggest thing for Duke is they needed shooters on this team because Cooper Flagg needs room to operate. And I think they found some shooters where they're going to rely on consistently in guys like Isaiah Evans, Kon Knueppel, Tyrese Proctor, and that'll allow Cooper Flagg a lot more room to work on the inside. And if teams want to go the opposite and they want to collapse the paint and slow down Cooper Flagg, you dish it to those guys on the outside. And if they get a couple of open threes, they're going to have to knock them down. Shout
out to these Duke freshmen. They've been incredible and so much fun to watch. Only hope that can continue moving forward. Kevin, this has been so much fun kind of reviewing where they're at so far. Hopefully in 12 more games, they're even further along in their progress, and Duke has more and more wins, and they're kind of racing through the ACC play. We'll see how that continues once league play returns on New Year's Eve. Tell us about Ball Durham and how people can support you.
Over at Ball Durham, you come read us every single day, everything you want on Duke basketball. So again, that's balldurham.com, and then you can follow us on social media at ball_Durham.
Thanks for the time, Kevin. We'll talk to you soon, okay?
Thanks, JJ.
All right, that's Kevin Connelly joining us here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils. Really great stuff. Love the thoughts, insight, and analysis from him, and we'll continue with the good work here with Kevin in the future. As always, let's go Duke. I'll talk to you tomorrow. My name is JJ Jackson. Thank you and good day.